RF here from Country Lunch Show on WOOL 91.5 FM from Bellows Falls, Vermont. Let's get back with part two of our February 19th, 2020 interview with Paleo Mountain Man and Budcat 7. I got a question. Okay, I noticed that looking up at the sky at night, it's like a portal, a projector. It's not always open of the iris or the eye, depending on how foggy it is, how cloudy it is, or how distant it is. But back then, I imagine it was much more open, the skies and the heavens, and you could see a lot more than I can see today, looking up at the sky from where I am. I can't imagine what the sky would be like back then.
Oh, well, without all the light pollution and everything, I'm sure it was phenomenal. I mean, I think that's a astronomer's dream, to live in a world where we don't have all this light pollution and just air pollution and everything, obstructing the night sky.
It's also
I mean, they didn't have TV, they didn't have radio, they didn't have books per se, as far as we know, or whatever. But they were looking at this night sky, and that was for all intents and purposes, that was their TV. That was their form of entertainment and wonder. But it was open to them, at least more than it is for us today. And how many people do you know at nighttime goes out and looks at the night sky every night? I know I do, but I mean, there's a lot of people who don't. But
we use telescopes today, but it is an iris. I mean, it does open and it does close, depending on how much it wants you to see at that time or the location that you're at. But I'm wondering how far these stone walls were up there. I mean, they could have been positioned like up at Jim's planet, like being in the middle of this cluster of stars, because it's so concentrated.
Absolutely.
Not
Absolutely.
just looking.
I mean, we know from other ancient cultures around the world that they were obsessed with, let's say Orion and the Pleiades, and I mean, they were obsessed with different astronomical constellations, whatever it was. I mean, and you have to ask yourself why. And even a fascination with the planets themselves. I mean, when we look in the sky and we look at the planets and everything, what do we see? We see a
the
little
stories
tiny
about the Milky
dot.
Way.
What do we, when we see the Milky Way or whatever, I mean, without a telescope, you can't really see any of that stuff. And I mean, you can see it barely, call it the Milky Way, because it looks like milk. But I mean, as far as the planets are concerned and the star clusters, like the Seven Sisters, let's say, for example, whatever, are clearly evident in the night sky. But the planets, let's say, they're the wandering stars, as the Greeks called them and the Arabs called them, the wandering stars. But what could you possibly know about those things? You look up, you see a tiny little dot of light in the sky, yet these ancient people who had no telescope, knew a lot about these planets and the other astronomical features of the sky. So
I think their eyes were bigger, so they didn't need
They
telescopes.
had better eyesight. You're right. I
well,
believe.
they definitely
I
had
agree.
bigger eyes, that's for sure. But
It was better eyesight. Plus, no light pollution. When it's dark,
yeah,
it's
no
really
light
dark.
pollution,
And yeah,
no
that helps
air
a lot.
pollution.
That helps a lot.
that
No
was-
television to look at. No screens.
That was their TV.
Yeah.
That was part of their whatever you learn on TV.
It's one thing
but
that runs through all these ancient cultures is their view of the heavens, and they all had it.
Right.
They all had their stories about it, and a lot of them are very similar, because the heavens are the same wherever you are. I mean, the constellations change a little bit, but it seems the view of the people was that we're attached to them somehow, and they're attached to us somehow, and
Well,
they're
that's
part
like
of our
the-
life. They're part of our life. They move around us. We're standing here watching all this, and over thousands of years, all these stories come up, but they were all watching the stars, and just a stone wall that you might walk
Well,
by was
you
watching the
know, it's
stars. The way it's placed,
as above,
it's
so below, right? So, I mean, we have that sort of aphorism from the past there, as above, so below. So,
it's a
it was
curiosity
standing
that
on the
runs through
heavens,
people's from
right?
these ancient peoples. They had it, and they knew a lot about it, and they had stories about it, and that's how you learned back then. You told stories, and you kept them forward, and you kept them forward. And stories were important. You didn't just change them to, make a point. You brought them forward, and that's how they learned. And I can picture people standing at parts of these walls and telling stories like that. And to me, the wall reflects, the heavens. The spiral in the wall is spiral in the heavens, the galaxies. It might be a story of an event in the heavens. To me, that's what
Right.
it is, because the wall itself is astronomical in nature. It's also spiritual in nature, and it's a lot of things.
Well, just think about the later cultures, all right? The cultures that we know in historical times, okay? So, whatever it is, the Chinese, the Romans, the Sumerians, the blah, 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 they all had stories about the heavens, okay? And especially about the planets, each individual planet. Obviously, we know about the Greeks and Romans, right? Jupiter and Zeus, and we know all of that stuff, right? So these people made up all kinds of stories about these astronomical bodies in all of these cultures. Okay, so that should strike everybody right there. They're looking into the sky. They see this god and that god, and then they have a fight, and this one's angry at this one's wife, and this, these are all the stories about things in the sky that we can observe, and obviously that tradition was carried over from the ancient past, you see. So we know they told stories about the night sky. They told stories about the sun and the moon and the planets, and they, they identified these things with people. They anthropomorphized them, as they say. So they turned the moon and the sun and Mars and Venus and Jupiter and Saturn into, anthropomorphized characters. They turned them into people. So we know
Made
that.
stories out
And
of it.
we know this is a tradition amongst people all around the world. And people like Velikovsky were the first ones to really look at all of the mythologies and histories of all these ancient people and say, hey, wait a second. These cultures who had nothing to do with each other say that this is what happened with the planet Jupiter and the planet Mars and the planet Venus and the planet Saturn, and they're all roughly saying the same thing. They tell the stories a little differently, and they use different characters, but the similarities amongst all these ancient cultures in their myths and beliefs, et cetera, were uncannily similar, and Velikovsky thought that would be curious, why people in such diverse cultures that had nothing to do with each other from all around the world had the same story about the planet Saturn and the planet Mars and the planet Venus, and why would they have all the same stories, yet they had nothing to do with each other culturally?
Well, it's the big picture show. It's the only show happening beyond Earth. During the daytime, you can see the Earth, but during the nighttime, there must have been, or it still is, so much activity happening at
Yeah,
night out
think
there.
about it. Think about what was going on up there. It must have seemed alive to them because of all the different things. When, if you go to the Midwest today and go, somewhere in the Midwest in low populated states and look up at the night sky, you can literally see everything up there.
There was no street
And,
lights, right?
right. And when you're looking at it, there's all kinds of stuff going. There's shooting stars all over the place, just constantly, all night long. You just look up and see a shooting star like every, couple of minutes. Because
Rocks
you
are
can see the
always
whole
falling out of the
vast
sky. Imagine that. There's rocks always falling out of the sky.
Yeah, that must have freaked them out too. I mean,
There's
think
rocks
about it,
coming out of the sky.
think about what they thought about when something like that happened. And I'm just recalling that it was on Christmas Day this past year in 2019. Christmas Day when I was walking home at night, very, very early in the morning. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. A meteor, a big one too, came down right in front of me as I was walking home. Nobody around, silent. Everybody's home in bed and whatnot. Christmas Eve, and I sort of startled me because it was big. And as it passed by, and I just thought to myself, when these people in ancient times saw these things or whatever, it must have totally, totally freaked them out.
Yeah, you don't see that many in your lifetime. You don't.
No.
And I'm
And
sure
I
they
happened
saw
to see
more of
this
them
one.
because, if you're out there and it is dark, you're going to see whatever's out there, unless you don't go out at night. But back then, even here where I am, it's pretty dark around here, but just the town, the little light coming out of the town interrupts the sky a lot.
Right.
Just a little light
Down
coming out
the
of the town.
ability to see. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can just imagine how much better it would be. And I've been in the desert and I've seen the stars, and you get numb though. You don't see them around places where we live, where there's a lot of light. You don't sort of attach yourself to it, and it is like watching TV at night. You could sit there and watch the stars. It would be a great thing to do. And I think they probably had special places to do that, like a big dolmen where you sit on the edge of a cliff and watch the stars, and that would be the place you watch the stars. I mean, they had to do their observing from somewhere, and there's things like that. And if
I think you're right. I think one of these things that when they say they find these earthen wall areas, let's say, that seem rather large, that was the Super Bowl. That was the arena of the
Right.
past. This is where
Exactly.
you would have your public gatherings and look at the sky at night, look at the night sky, but like similar to us today, right? So you have your sports arena where you play football, everybody goes there, that's like a sort of a public thing, but when you're building your small town over here, you may want to put like a mini one over there, or like in your case, Jimmy, by your area over there that I think is a major administrative area over there, you just build it right into the wall, because you can't get to the arena every night. That may be 100 miles away or whatever it is. So you're going to do a little mini one.
yeah, why not?
And that's what your wall is. It's a little mini one for the administrators there to go to at night and take a look at the night sky and make of it whatever they're going to make of it. And of course, if this is all the stuff that they're watching, and this is what their lives are predominantly involved with, the movements in the heavens and the night skies, well, that's some of the language that you're probably going to find in the wall.
I think so too.
Yeah. Hey, let me cut in and do a station ID and a couple of PSAs. And before I do that, you can find out more information by going to YouTube. What's your site, Jim?
Paleo Mountain Man.
And Budcat7, what's your site on YouTube?
Stonewall Research.
Okay, Budcat7. Okay, you can find out all the information that you want getting up to date with what they're talking about. We will be back in a second. I am going to do a station ID